Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 100, the big milestone. We have finally made it, and you guys knew last week when I said we had big plans for episode 100. You knew that I was going to get somebody crazy on the show, and we've had a bunch of crazy guests on the show. We've had Mike Bernardo. We've had Larry Carnahan, the president of NASCA himself. We've had Matt Emig. We've had Kalman Choka. We've had a number of GOATs on this podcast. And today, arguably, and in my opinion, the greatest point fighter of all time, Raymond Daniels, the man himself. I am so excited to have him on the show tonight. I mean, he's sitting right here. You guys can see him motioning this way. But anyway, so for those of our Black Belt Magazine audience that are tuning in that may not have watched sport karate as much, right? Maybe you only know Raymond Daniels from his full contact career, which has also been extraordinarily impressive, from highlight knockouts that break the internet, winning titles in glory, you name it. But this guy, from a sport karate perspective, because this is a sport karate show, is truly a legend of the game, and it is a blessing to hear the stories that are going to be shared tonight, the mentality like no other that we've ever seen in this game. And then, Ray, I know that you're probably tired of me just talking with you sitting there. So if you could, give us a little bit of an introduction yourself, and we'll get rolling here.
All right, what's up, you guys? First and foremost, it's a pleasure and an honor to be on your 100th show. You know what I mean? I love to see martial artists that are competitors, and they're so passionate about the sport and about sport martial arts, because sport martial arts is my first love of martial arts. And I love to see amazing competitors like yourself that continue to find different venues and different avenues in order to be able to share that passion kind of with everybody and stuff. So I think you're doing an amazing job. It's an honor to be a part of, your 100th episode. That's always a big milestone to say, hey, 100 episodes later and you're still pushing through. So thank you for having me. And just looking forward to kind of just, making sure I stay in touch with the sport karate side of life and, continuing to grow with the sport.
Yes, sir. And thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And now the first question we ask anybody that comes on the show, because in sport, you come from so many different backgrounds, right? How did the whole martial arts journey begin for you?
For me, I'm a third generation fighter, second generation martial artist. So my father, Frank Daniels, was my original instructor. I started martial arts when I was about 5 years old. He gave me my first little karate uniform. Was like, hey, I kind of remember him bringing it up, like, you want to do some karate? And I was like, yeah, so that's kind of how I began my martial arts journey. It was a prerequisite, so to speak, for me to do martial arts. My mom knew I was going to do martial arts. I was talking to her. She said she was going to knew I was going to do martial arts. That's why my middle name is Lee. She was like, I knew you were going to do martial arts, so we named your middle name is Lee, like after Bruce Lee, because we knew you were going to have to do martial arts, being your father's son.
That's awesome. And, that's something we hear so often in the sport karate world, especially, but I mean, also just in martial arts in general, is getting into it because your dad took you to class for the first time. And I mean, a lot of the great point fighters of today, we see training coming up under their dads, right? Avery Plowden's a great example. And then I know there's a litany of others that have been trained by their dads. So yeah, that's a really cool part of your story. So where did tournaments come into play? Was it always just expected that you were going to go compete, or how did that come about?
No, honestly, I got in competing a little bit later in my years. I did kind of like a little bit of like local circuit kind of around town and stuff like that. And I remember I was at one of those tournaments with my brother, my stepbrother, Mark. And we found this piece of paper that was on the ground, and it had a list of like tournaments. And it had like NBL. I was like, oh, what's NBL? And then I went online and I was doing some research. I was like, oh, they have all these tournaments. So that was like, I think I was like maybe like 16. I didn't get into competing until I was like 16, 17 on like a national kind of level. And that's when I kind of started traveling a little bit. And that's when it really started to like pique my interest about like the sport. I was just like, oh man, this is a whole lot of fun. Oh, I get to travel and stuff as well. So that's when I first started competing on the NBL circuit back in the day.
And that's so interesting because you go back, and we're going to talk about the different primes of your career, but you go back and you watch, the Paul Mitchell footage of when you were wearing the black and white, And you were young then. So your rise starting late in childhood competing must have been pretty quick. So what was that transitional period for you? When did you realize that you had a chance to be the best at this?
It was after I won my first Super Grands at I was like 17, and I had fought some amazing fighters that were there, like Ryan Huntley, Trevor Nash was there. I mean, we were having some battles, and the next year I moved to the adult division in like '98, and I was just like, man, it's like I'm actually pretty good at this, and I was just like, I wonder how good or how great I could become if I actually put my all into it. If I put everything that I had, how good can I be? How great can I become? So that was right when I turned like 18. I was like, I think I can be really good at this. And then as I started kind of getting noticed by some different teams, I was literally traveling to martial arts tournaments. When I was younger, we would sell chocolate. I would go to businesses and kind of get sponsors. I would go to tournaments by taking Greyhound buses. I didn't have a place to stay, so I would literally sleep in the lobby. And sometimes that's how I met like Mr. Felton and started traveling. They were on the same circuit, and they noticed me just, taking a Greyhound bus, taking several days to get there. And that's when I just kind of really became passionate about it. And I knew how bad I wanted it because I was going the extra mile in order to make sure I made it to the places that I needed to do in order to push myself.
And it's funny that like you go all the way and you win Super Grands, and that's your first realization that like, hey, if I actually like went all in on this, I could be pretty good at it. So, anybody that knows me knows that I'm a huge sport karate history nerd. I've watched like every sport karate video there is on YouTube, right? So I've seen all of your film from your younger days on Paul Mitchell, and then kind of what most people would consider the longest part of your prime. In point fighting, that is. The prime is still going in combat. The longest part, which was like the All-Stars era. And then that was also kind of split by, you had the Achilles rupture and then came back and then won some more after the Achilles. And so like many great athletes, I see like ESPN post all the time, like the primes of Tom Brady or whatever, right? And so your career very similarly mirrors that in that you can pinpoint 3 or 4 different Hall of Fame careers within your one. So looking back over the years, first, kind of summarize that for us and take us through that evolution. And then when you go back and watch the film, do you have a favorite of, watching that way?
Oh, wow. That's an amazing question. It's got so many pieces and so many emotions just tied into that one bundle and just into this one question. So the first, I would say like my first prime was my proving myself prime. I was a young buck, and I got picked up. I got noticed by Paul Mitchell, and it was a team that I really wanted to be on because they had some of the top fighters in the world at the time. They had Jody Tension, Mike Pombero. They had great fighters like Brian Plembo, Pedro Xavier. They just had a plethora of the fighters. Whoever was a fighter was on Paul Mitchell at the time. So when I came on and I finally got picked up by Paul Mitchell, it was a younger time, but I wanted to prove to myself that I was able to be on a great team like that. And I wanted to prove to the great fighters that I was fighting with. That's when NASCA started implementing the only the 5 or 7 points for team fighting, because I was the young guy that would go out on team and get like a 12 to 15 point lead. And they were like, hold on, we need to stop that, because it was myself, Jody, and Mike Pombero. And I was just the young Thundercat, and I would go out there and I would just go at it with everybody, and I would rack the points up because I wanted to show these guys that, hey, I deserve to be here and I deserve to wear this black and white. So that was an amazing time. A lot of those guys took me under their wing, so I didn't get rained on. Jody took me under his wing. He wasn't on Paul Mitchell, but took me. A couple other people were Damon Gilbert and Carlos Tierney also took me under the wing when I was in that young era, and they helped me out and trained me. And Mike Pombero, during that time, was actually a very huge mentor throughout my martial arts career. He was somebody who I aspired to be like. He was somebody who was a mentor, but also became my rival some years later as well. So, or during that time period, should I say. And then after I left Paul Mitchell, there was kind of like I guess Paul Mitchell was kind of like Rome, and then it was the fall of Rome. No offense, Paul Mitchell, I still love you guys. But that was the Titanic kind of sank for the Paul Mitchell fighting squad. You guys are forms, competitors, and weapons. Paul Mitchell they run the city. So, but that was kind of the big dynasty of the fighting era for Paul Mitchell. And then I left and created my all-star team, which was an amazing time. And the reason, the big breakup was, a competitive thing, but one of the main reasons is I wanted to travel international. I wanted to travel, and I wanted to see how good or great I could be, not just in my own backyard, in my own country. I wanted to go to other organizations, and I wanted to go and compete against the best. I saw these videos of people over in Europe. I'm like, ooh, like I want to fight them. And Paul Mitchell at the time didn't want to do that. And so I left. I created my all-star squad, and we started traveling international and had an amazing time going to some amazing events, such as the Irish Open. There's some amazing events that are over there. Bristol Open, we actually might even be going this year. And then come around, I think it was 2012, I ruptured my Achilles tendon. That was actually one of the most humbling times of my professional career, just in my life. I loved, just being an athlete. I loved being able to do what I wanted to do. But for a really long period of time, for 6 months, I wasn't even able to walk or do anything. And the doctors told me that I would have to, be out for a year. They told me that I would never be able to come back and compete in the way that I did. So it was a very scary time and trying time for myself. I came back a little bit early without my doctor's approval. I came back, I think, immediately 6 months, and I was supposed to be out for a year. And, I had to hit some really tough times. So this was my favorite time, because the other ones, people saw my victories, but this was a time when I was already on top. And then I actually lost a few grand champions, and I had never really lost like that, multiple times in a row. And then by the time it was my anniversary was the Battle of Atlanta. So that was one of my favorite times of being able to come back. And then obviously I still have the all-star team and doing my thing in the kickboxing and MMA world.
That's so much to unpack. Anybody who follows sport karate, as soon as you start talking about the end of the Paul Mitchell days and the start of the all-star days, everybody starts getting on the edge of their seat, right? But
yeah.
and it's funny because even you were kind of sorry, JPM, still love you, right? But
yeah.
Me, anybody who knows me knows that I bleed black and white. Paul Mitchell was the only team that I ever wanted to be on, and that I was so blessed to make that dream come true, right? But I would argue, from what I know about the history, that there's a reason we call it the Exodus, right? Because it was great fighters leaving the team. But I would argue that without that, sport karate history is so vastly different, and I may not have been as inspired as I was to want to be on Paul Mitchell, because the first thing I saw when I started competing was the heat of the JPM All-Stars rivalry. That was born from that whole event. You know what I'm saying? And so seeing that, and sorry, Ray, but I sided with the Paul Mitchell guys. I was coaching, so I was but anyway, so that was such an influential event in the history of sport karate. And then the rivalry that it brought about was great. You know what I mean? And I love how you mentioned that it's all love and it's all respect. And reasons for doing it. So just now that I've kind of opened up that can of worms again, I just want to give you any further comment on it, because truly it was a good thing in the end for everybody. And it progressed the sport to a degree that nobody could have predicted, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have nothing but love for Steve Babcock and Don Rodriguez. They were amazing to me. They are amazing people. I still talk to them. I've gone to hang out at their dojos, at their homes and stuff like that. So we have nothing but love and mutual respect for each other. It was a difference of kind of viewpoints of where they wanted the team to go, where I was looking to go with myself and my team. And the reason why they call it, say, the exodus or the fall of Paul Mitchell, because that's when its fighting team just kind of exited and everybody kind of just left and went their own way. We all went to, say, the All-Stars, but you gave me goosebumps just talking about, I remember the rivalry that it created, and it created other rivalries where there was CJB, Elite, all those guys were around and stuff like that. So it created this energy for the sport karate and fighting. Now everybody's kind of buddy. It's not that we weren't buddy, but we were there about business. I think I think it was a great decision for me to do it with the All-Stars. I mean, I think the All-Stars have been one of the most dominant fighting teams for the past, maybe 2 decades now, since the exodus of Paul Mitchell. So Paul Mitchell was the Titan, and then the All-Stars came in and kind of took over.
I'd argue we got 2 Titans, but I don't. Anyway, so now I want to go through, I mean, obviously you tell kind of the big picture story from that bird's eye view, right? But now let's zoom in, because in order to have the career that you had, there were so many gigantic individual wins, right? Whether it be individual matchups and you beating those guys that you really wanted to beat when you were on your way up, or whether it be prestigious titles, right? Diamond rings and Irish Open weights. So take us through, if you had to pick 3, 5, whatever the number is, some of your favorite career wins in sport martial arts.
All right. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. A few different ones. So I'll go with I'll start with the earlier part of my career. One of the biggest events I used to always want to win. I won, I think maybe 5 or 6 of them, was Charlie Lee's. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna see if I can get in contact with Charlie and see if I can start doing. He used to give away this Rolex, and oh my gosh, when I was young, I was just like, I was a Rolex guy, and I think I had like 6 Rolexes on my wrist at one time. I was just like, man, this is a bad man. I was like going to open a jewelry store after I retired, or whatever the case was. So I think it was that was actually one of the events that I looked forward to going to the most, because I loved Rolex watches. If he would have still been going on, I think I would have probably had about 20 of them. That would have been my goal. How you doing there, Mr. Plowden? I saw my man Jesse Ray too. I would have definitely probably had about 20. So that was one of my favorite ones. The other couple other prestigious events, the U.S. Open is just one of the biggest. These are just the events right here in the States. U.S. Open, one of the biggest events that brings in just competitors from all over the world. There are people that come from countries that I hadn't even heard of. I'm like, where are you from? Okay. They're like, they know who I am. I'm like, all right. But so I love going there to compete, just because, I mean, you can't go wrong with going to Disney. The promoters, Mr. McCoy, Mr. Sawyer, Mr. Schaefer, they put on an amazing event that's truly exceptional. Battle of Atlanta. These are just my state's event. Battle of Atlanta was always a fun one. That was actually one of the events where I got one of my first opportunities to be on kind of the national stage, fighting this Taekwondo guy, Mr. Corley, and then Mr. Smith had said, hey, when this fighter got injured, you want to come on stage and fight? And that was my first opportunity. I think I was only 18, might have been 98 and 99. And I got a chance to go on stage and kind of fight in front of everybody. And that was my introduction to the NASCAR world. And I remember Mr. Carnahan saying, oh yeah, you're the guy that wears the NBL belt. We're cool now though, right, Mr. Carnahan? That Diamond Nationals, speaking of Mr. Carnahan, that is one of the most prestigious rings to win in the U.S. Right now, I know they have the lightweight and the heavyweight. No offense to you guys that won the lightweight and the heavyweight, but back in the day, there could be only but one. So that's why I love Jesse Ray's The Last Man Standing. I like it to be there's only one. There can only be one champion. There can only be one person. And that's what I loved about the diamond ring. And my diamond was bigger probably because it was one instead of cutting the 2 pieces. So you guys are getting a half carat. I was getting a full one. All right. And I got about 5 or 6 of those. Now I'm joking. But that was an awesome event. And then my top event ever, Irish Open. The Irish Open has to be hands down. It is the fighters fighting event. There is no event that brings more prestigious fighters over. When I left Paul Mitchell, that was exactly what is the thing I wanted to do. Is I wanted to go over, and I wanted to take what we do over here in the States and take it over to Europe and just all over the world in general. But the Irish Open was an opportunity and a big enough stage where we grew with that event. And then even now, all of the people from the States go over there because they heard about, what the All-Stars were doing over on the international scene. And then, they were years behind us. I feel like in competition, just like when the Forms guys came over there, they're just like, whoa, what are they doing? They'd never seen it. And now they're playing catch up to, the Forms and the weapons and stuff. It was like that with the fighting. I felt at the beginning as well, but now they're all catching up.
So that's interesting, because one thing that I wanted to dive into was, you are the all-time open weight wins leader and probably a whole bunch of other different wins leader at the Irish Open, which for that to be the point fighters tournament, that is the pinnacle of point fighting, is that event. It's crazy to have amassed the stats that you have there. And so my biggest question about that was just, how'd you do it, right? In those early years, did you feel like it was kind of easier to grab some of those wins because the Americans were a step ahead? Because obviously by the end of your career, some of those titles you were winning were against, an incredible gauntlet of fighters that you had to get through. So take us through that, because what even is the open weight total? Like 11?
I think it's actually at 10. It's actually at 10. So, doing that, one of the things about me and my career is I feel like I've transcended like generations of fighters. Like I fought through different eras and was able to be consistent. So I won a total of 10 Irish Opens. I wanted to do winning. There, most people have won one, maybe somebody's won two at the most. I think that's the closest anybody ever is to me. And I have 10 of them. Nobody I think I ever more than two, maybe three. I think there's one female with maybe 3 or 4. But I had 10 of them. And for me, that was the biggest event. People don't understand also, and you probably will get this, but in jet lag, when you go over and you have to compete in another country, is very trying on you, on your body. But I wanted to be able to go and compete in anybody's backyard, and you just tell me what the rule set is, and I should be able to compete and dominate in any aspect of fighting. And the Irish Open was the biggest one. So I wanted to go over there into everybody else's backyard, into another country where I wasn't home, and I wanted to be able to dominate in the fashion, and I wanted to set a precedent that no one would ever be able to touch or obtain. If you look, there's a lot of great U.S. fighters, but a lot of them will have trouble when they have to transition over, say to Europe, into the European style of fighting. And then the European fighters, they'll come over here and they'll have trouble transferring over to the Americanized style of fighting. So myself and a lot of the members on my team, like Jack Felton, and Rod Lavoie, are able to do either side of it. So for me, it was about setting a precedent that no one else could do. I had to fight some amazing people over the years, and the rules started kind of changing a little bit. Now they're doing a little bit of the front hand body punch. I don't really like that too much because I think it takes away from the true athleticism of the fight towards the latter years, because that's how fighters can keep a fight close without being as crisp or as strong. So that's why I don't like the front hand body. It's not really a strong technique, and it doesn't allow fighters to take risks. People were always entertained by my fights because I take those kind of, just different risks. But when you start to allow the front hand body jab, it limits fighters, because now they can get hit with the body jab when they're trying to do creative techniques.
And I couldn't agree more. That was beautiful. The body jab, I don't like it either. Which now we're opening up another can of worms here. But I'm sure we're talking rules. Are you a 1-point body kick or 2-point body kicks guy?
I'm actually a 1-point body kick guy, especially because a lot of times a person's blitzing in and they give this bent leg chambered side kick that wasn't really a kick. It was really kind of jammed, and the person was punching them in the face, and the person gets 2 points and one person gets 1 point. So I think kicks to the body should be worth 1. If you get kicked in the head, I think that's when you deserve 2. And the spins, I think, should be 3. At least that's from my perspective. And so that's a few things. And the one other big thing I think is the sport keeps taking too many breaks. So I think there should be 10 counts every time somebody has to take a break or get some type of timeout where there was no foul committed, so points over. So I just want to put that out into the universe.
I agree. That would speed up the pace of the game, which is really something that point fighting needs, because especially as we get more and more live streams where we need to keep the action going to keep viewers. If you've got a point fight that stops for 5, 6, 7 minutes because of equipment or an injury or whatever, having a 10 count like that would definitely speed things up. I also love the fact that you brought up the bent chamber scoring on a defensive side kick, because I get on my soapbox about this all the time on this show, because it's like, I don't know how judges can score a chambered defensive side kick as a scoring technique, but that's another topic for another.
Oh, definitely. Exactly.
So last question about Irish Open, because you mentioned the adjustments, and that's one thing. If you go back and watch the tape over the years, you did an excellent job of, when you were fighting in Europe, at times you looked like a European fighter fighting in Europe. You took on some of the things that were, those techniques that were effective and that scored most often. And that is in part what enabled you to adapt so well. How long did that take? Did you show up to your first Irish Open and win it? Or were there some growing pains trying to make those adjustments?
Actually, by the first time I went over to the Irish Open, I was already the first time I went over. I think it was in 2002. I won the Irish Open in I think almost 10 point spread at pretty much everybody that I fought. So the front hand body jab got adapted more and more as if the fighting style wasn't able, I don't think, to keep up. So the front hand body jab allowed for clashes to go. I remember the first time I had ever lost in a regular division over there. I lost, I think, 23 to like 24. And I was just like, no one scores 24 points on me. I really pride myself on like my movement, my defense, but every time I would like blitz, they started doing like this point each way. And then since that time, this was like probably in 2006 or something like that. And then that's when the front hand body jab just came to be like this amazing thing that everybody kind of started depending on. I think I was able to go over that not because of my punching or my kicking, but my movement. And people still have trouble with that today. It's because of my movement that I've always been able to dictate fights. And that's why I was always able to be able to adapt. Even times when I wasn't doing sport karate, I was just in my full contact time. I would still go and compete at the Irish Opens. And it would take me till about that Sunday when the open weight, that's why I always fought best in open weight, because I would have to adapt to doing point karate again. And by the time the point karate, the open weight came around, which was the biggest and most prestigious and most paid event, in all of sport karate, by that time I had already found my rhythm. And that's why I was able to kind of do my thing consistently in that particular division.
That's awesome. I'm just going to reiterate for the audience one more time. 10 Irish Open open weights. Second place is like 2 or 3. He doesn't even know. Absolutely insane. If that's not GOAT status, then I don't know what is. And speaking of GOAT status, perfect segue, right? Because one of the things that like little 8-year-old Jackson loved watching about Raymond Daniels was your entire pre-fight routine. And then the thing that always stood out to me was, you'd lift the fist up and then you'd say out loud, greatest of all time, God over all things. And, I firmly believe that mentality of saying out loud, greatest of all time, and then, of course, the religious side of it as well. But specifically, like the mentality that you are the greatest of all time carried you through, all of these different primes of your career and all these major wins. So talk a bit about not only the iconic pre-fight ritual that now like so many young point fighters can probably imitate from memory, but then also the impact of that mentality and how much of what you were saying reflected what was going on in here.
Yeah, oh man, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about my pre-fight ritual. I learned that, and I started to really dial in and tune into that. A friend of mine, Colin Van Duzen, introduced me to something called NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. It's basically being able, long story short, to program your mind and your body and the physiology. You're able to come back to a moment in time where you're at your absolute best. Like I said, when you travel, sometimes you don't feel good. You got a pulled hamstring, your toe is injured, your ankle hurts, you got a broken hand. And I fought through so many different things, but because I've always been able to program my mind and my body to be able to come back to a point in time where I was at my absolute best, at my absolute peak of being in. That's why I was able to perform the same way and still the same way consistently over the years. So I kind of go through my little ritual. I always bow down and I pray to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and I pray. And then when I come up, and I do what I call my anchor, and that's when I go, and then that's when I blurt out the greatest of all time. And if you don't believe in yourself, no one else does. You have to first believe in yourself in order to accomplish any goal or any dream in life. You don't just stumble upon it by like, oh, I accidentally won. You have to believe that you're actually gonna win. You have to show up. You have to make sure you train before that. So that confidence doesn't just come from me saying it out loud. It comes from also an anchor of all of the previous training to get up there. So the part of that NLP is like, if you've ever seen like a Marvel movie, you know how it flips through the magazine, like when I'm doing my anchoring and when I'm praying, I'm flipping through a bunch of pages of victories, of failures, of successes, of climbing hills, of training. And when I turn around, I'm getting goosebumps right now, just kind of going through it right now. And that's why I say I am the greatest of all time, and then God over all things, because no matter how great you become as an individual. I always say, don't believe your own hype. You know what I mean? So that's why I put I make sure it's a double meaning for me. And that's why I wear it on my fight shorts. That's why I say it out loud, because I truly believe it. And I think that then it gives me the ability to go out and perform at my best with no doubt.
I love that. I love everything about that, because it's like, I'd never heard you go into that level of detail about it, but I just knew with as consistently as you did it, that there had to be meaning behind it. And, I think a lot of great athletes have something like that, and particularly the mentality. It's like everybody always talks about Kobe's Mamba mentality. I mean,
yeah,
in many ways, it's exactly what it is. You got to believe that you are the best to truly be unstoppable in the ring. And in many ways, that's exactly what you were.
You see a lot of basketball players that'll throw, powder in their LeBron's, his big, or people slap themselves. And then I would always go in and finish with my bow, and I would bow to the judge. And this means I'm going to use my mind and my heart. And then I'm asking the Lord for forgiveness for what I'm about to do to that person. How you doing there, Mr. Corley?
Asking the Lord for forgiveness for what I'm about to do to that person. That is great.
Well, I know I'm about to do. I'm not ever trying to hurt anybody or anything like that. I'm just trying to. That's why I love point sparring, because I'm trying to prove a point. The point is I'm a better martial artist than you at this point in time, right here, right now. Not tomorrow, right here, right now. I'm better than you, and that's the point I need to prove. And that's why I loved point sparring, because you had the ability to adapt to so many different types of fighters, and to be able to be successful consistently. Most fighters will go out and they'll do something, and they're like, and they're not able to do it again. And you see the ups and the hills and the valleys. For me, I wanted to continue to peak. And I think that is part of that anchoring and stuff like that, part of going through that, traditional segment and series of movements brought me back to be able to do that time and time again.
And you talk about proving that you're better than the other guy. There was nobody better at doing that than you were. I remember one of my favorite memories of you, because we're going to talk highlights. This is one that I didn't even type up in the script, but just going through memories. Like, I remember Battle of Atlanta one year. I think it was your first Battle of Atlanta back after the Achilles.
Oh.
And I don't remember who you were fighting. It didn't matter. But you were fighting on stage in the daytime. And, I think you're up however many. And, you go to the line for the next clash. And then instead of looking at the guy you're fighting, you look out at the crowd, and you're bouncing and you're looking at the crowd. And then you take off and blitz. And then you do you remember that? Is that something you did regularly?
It's something that I do regularly. There are times when either I had injuries or I had different training things. So I used to call it peripheral fighting. So I can fight a person without actually looking at them. So I'll be looking at the camera, but my opponent is, say, over here, and I'm able to take off, and I'm using my peripheral vision, because fighting is about movement and distance and timing. And I was never, like I say, the hardest puncher or the hardest kicker, but because I was able to bridge the gap in such a way and with the right timing, I didn't have to actually look at a fighter. So that's where I got a few of my different kind of like tricks from. I call them people always think I'm showing up, but I'm just entertaining myself, and we are martial artists. Keyword is the artist. And so every time I fought, I always thought, like, what if someone has never seen sport karate before? Like, I want to give them something memorable, something to be like, man, what is that guy doing? Like, why is he doing something a little bit differently? So that's why I did the peripheral vision. I did the hand behind the back fighting. I did both hands behind, I did all kind of different things just to, one, entertain myself, because it made it fun for me. But most people, I always felt like were competing against me. I never felt that I was competing against any of them. I always felt like I was there to dominate, and they were never really my competition. My competition was always myself. And if somebody did ever beat me, it wasn't because they were better, as I just ran out of time.
Beautifully said. After this podcast, we're going to need like a full like Raymond Daniels audio and just give a biography. But anyway, so talking about highlights, right? When I say highlight and Raymond Daniels is on the show, the image that flashes in everybody's mind is any variation of the two-touch, double jump spinning back kick, right? So where does that come from? Because that's not something that people were just throwing. You know what I mean? Like the reason when you see somebody throw that today in a karate tournament, it's because they saw Raymond Daniels throw it, right? So tell us about why'd you start doing it? And then when did you realize like truly how effective of a weapon it could be?
Okay, so this is how, let me give you a little bit of history of where that two-touch comes from, because I got to pay homage to my predecessors. So the first person I ever saw do it on a video, and the first person I ever saw do it actually live. First person I ever saw do it live was Mike Pombero at Compete Nationals. I remember him hitting, I think he was fighting Dale Jacoby, and he hit this guy, bam, bam, and he hits him with this, and he just turned around. And I think I like 16, and was like, Compete was like in my backyard, so it was a national event, but I didn't really know, and he's just got his hands up, his tongue hanging out. I'm like, who's this guy? I'm like, I want to fight him, you know? And the first person I ever saw do it on a video, which is actually before around the same time I saw Mikey do it, was actually Pedro Xavier. He was on Paul Mitchell, and he had the nastiest, like, quick side spin side, pop. And I was just like, man, that's a really, really awesome move, you know? So, you know, people see, and they saw me do it at, you know, on the big stage, but they didn't see, you know, how many times I failed in practice doing that, how many times I had to try and do that on the bag, and how many times I actually started to do it in sport karate. So people saw that highlight one, but I've done that hundreds of times in sport karate terms with people, you know, exploding at me. The particular time you're talking about, that one was a little bit different because that was in one of my glory fights. Actually, that was actually after one of my first losses as a professional kickboxer. So I wanted to actually come out, and I wanted to do something. I had trained so hard. I had just started training with my new Muay Thai coach at the time, Tyler Wambos from Classic Fight Team. My boxing coach Ramona Spot, but I wanted to come out, and I didn't honestly know I was going to do it like that, but I wanted to come out and I wanted to make a statement and show that, you know, just because I had a setback that, you know, I wanted to show my championship mentality, and I wanted to come back and I wanted to make a statement and let everybody know that I'm not one to be messed with. And then I came out there and I did that move, and I actually was kind of like, I hit him and I was like, boom. I was like, yeah, it's like he's out. And then I was just thinking to myself, I remember just thinking, did I just do that on national television? I think the cameras are rolling. And then it just kind of, everybody erupted. So it was a amazing kind of amazing experience of doing that. But it came from all of my training. But again, my predecessors that did it before me would have been Mike Pombero and Pedro Xavier.
I love that. Giving credit where credit's due. And then one thing that I go back and I watch that glory clip, and like all respect to your opponent, but I'm like, if this guy had watched one of Ray's point fights, he would have, like, you got to know that's coming. Like, you got to prepare. You know what I'm saying? But no, to see you land that, and I mean, it wasn't like it was a lucky shot. You set it up. It was in the right moment. You landed flush, and he was out. It was over. Absolute, like, masterpiece of a combat sports highlight. And there's others of those that we're going to get to. But I want to take a moment, and I want to sympathize with you for a little bit. Right? Like, you know me. I'm a bow guy, right? And then
yeah.
As
respect on your bow game, though. Much respect on it.
Thank you. And so one thing that I hear a lot about bow guys now, because I defend bow guys now, because I'm super impressed by the bow guys out there now, right? Is I get people that'll come up to me and they'll be like, Jackson, look what you did, man. Like, everybody's doing all these tricks now. And I'm like, I struck too. And hey, you look at all my kids and they can strike just as well as they trick, right? Because I teach them that you can't trick like that unless you can strike like that first, right? And so people are always like, Jackson, like, you're the reason everybody does these tricks. I'm like, no. They're striking first. And then, like, sure, give me the credit for the tricks. That's fine, right? But in point fighting, right, I feel like oftentimes I watch young point fighters, because I'm a huge point fighting fan. I watch every age group. And if there's point fighting and there's good people in it, I'm going to watch it. And I see all the time people throwing stuff that they ain't got no business throwing, right? Like some kid going for the cheat 720 trying to land it. Like, it'll be like a 2-2 fight with 30 seconds left. I'm like, what are you, like, you know what I'm saying? So I want to talk a little bit about that side, about, you know, being able to inspire a new generation of point fighters as you have inspired many generations of point fighters at this point, but then also kind of balancing that with like, hey, if you want to get to the level where you're doing these things that I did, here's what it takes to get there. Because I know you're also a great mentor and coach of many point fighters coming up. Elijah Everill, arguably the best on the planet right now, a great example of that. So I know that's a lot going on there. But
yeah.
Pack that a little.
I mean, one, it's flattering to have, people try to mimic you. I think that's the best compliment somebody can pay you is to either say, copy your style or to do things or try to do things like you do. Maybe they don't have, say, the blueprint or the formula and understand why you do it or how you're able to do it in that way. I look at people that say transcended. Let's just use basketball for example. Michael Jordan, somebody who transcended the game, for instance, have his tongue hanging out. Everybody would have their tongue hanging out while they're playing basketball, accidentally licking each other. This is pre-COVID though, so it was okay. But no. And then if you look at like say Kobe Bryant, the Mamba with the fadeaway, everybody wanted to fade away. If you look at Steph Curry, everybody wants to shoot 3-pointers now. They want to shoot 3 and turn around and walk away. Like, just look at the ball go in the hole. Like, so you have these players that, are so instrumental in the sport that they kind of changed the game. Before I came, everybody was a kicker from like Pedro and the Jotties and stuff like that. Now everybody kind of blitzes a little bit more. I think that has to do a little bit with more of, a little bit more of my influence. Now, the tricky stuff. So I had this mentor slash, I guess he'd be called my coach, but he's more my mentor, John Ramsey. And he always called my stuff like my highlights and my showtime. He's like, it's not showtime, it's not party time until you at least get up 5 to 7 points. He's like, once you get me and you're up 5 to 7 points, you can party. He's like, but anytime the fight is closer than 5 to 7, there is no showtime. So I would purposely go out, get up by a bunch of points just so I could party a little bit. And I would look over at him and he was like, okay, you can go. And then I would be able to do it. So my thing to the young Wex, try those things, continue to be creative, allow those creative juices to flow. However, as Jackson said, if it's a 2-2 match with 10 seconds left and you're trying to do a fadeaway side, spin side, or a 720 kick, you should not be doing that. It's stick to the bread and butter. It's one of the basics. So shameless plug, my Evolution Fighting Systems, you can check it out on RaymondDaniels.com. It's actually the blueprint of how I train great fighters like Elijah Everhill, Jack Felton, how I've trained Robbie LeBois, how I've trained all these different fighters on my team and people outside. I'm training current Pyle Sorifico. I'm training Tice Talbot right now. So all these guys are Jamal Albini. I'm not going to leave you hanging, Jamal. But I've trained them and I've basically created a blueprint so that way you don't have to go through all the trial and error that I did. So it's basically a step-by-step, technique by technique that's broken down to show you guys that. So stick to your basics. Jotty tension, I always talked about it. If you look at it throughout the history from the beginning of sport karate to now, the greatest fighters had 4 basic techniques. If you look at like Mr. Plowdenard, to compliment, he had a beautiful reverse punch. There's 4 techniques: side kick, round kick, back fist, body punch. If you master just one of those techniques, you can become one of the best fighters in the world. And then they have the party package, which are the spin kicks, the side spins, the 720s, the 540s. That's the party pack. You don't really need those. Those are just accessories to accessorize and make the rest of those techniques look good.
And shameless plug indeed, but I love it. Absolutely. Anybody that wants to be better at point fighting, I mean, who else to learn from than the best, right? So Evolution Fighting Systems. Again, what's the URL they can go find that at?
You can go just check it out at RaymondDaniels.com. I got my entire system, levels 1 through 8. If you want to just learn the cool stuff that I do, I have these two. Part 1 and part 2 is called Fighting with Style. So I teach you guys some of my cool little style tips. But if you want the finer details of everything, I would highly recommend checking that out.
Awesome. I recommend it as well. You guys go check that out, but not until after this show is over. All right.
True. I know.
So next thing we got. Okay. So we're talking about inspiring future generations. And I got to share a personal story here because I was one of the little kids who the Raymond Daniels, right? So this is New England Open 2008, which New England Open 2008 is the tournament that I started to love point fighting and becoming a fan of point fighting. I was already all in on being a forms and weapons guy. But New England Open 2008, watching JPM All-Stars on stage, that team fight was what got me to love point fighting. right?
Who won that? Who won that team fight?
All Stars won that team fight.
Oh, okay, I'm just checking, just make sure my memory. I get hit in the head sometimes. You know what I mean? My memory comes and goes. I didn't remember. I just messing with you.
No, you're good. So, the thing that I remember even more than the team fight, I was talking to my dad about the fact that I was doing this podcast, and even he remembered it. Was, I think it was on Saturday. I was leaving the tournament, and I had a couple like modest little third and fourth place trophies, right? And there you were standing outside the tournament. And you saw me with my little trophies, and you made a big deal about it and congratulated me. And I mean, you probably don't even remember this, right? Because I was just some other kid. But that, because I knew who you were. I knew you were Raymond Daniels, right? And that was such a special moment that I'll never forget that. You know what I mean? And that was one of those little things and other experiences that I had as a kid that showed me that is what I want to do. That's the level that I want to try to be at in this sport. So speak a little bit to the importance of being a role model for sport karate, because that comes with the territory. If you're going to be one of the best in the world, then it's expected of you. It's a responsibility to do that, right? And so talk about the importance of it, and maybe just advice for some of those guys that are becoming some of the top fighters in the world right now, and help them understand the responsibility that comes with it.
Oh man, thank you. You kind of gave me goosebumps. I felt all chilly inside of you. You're talking about that moment and stuff. And for me, it's not a moment that an exact moment in time that say I remember personally, right? But I would encourage all the top fighters or competitors of today to make sure you take a moment to do those type of things. So for me, I always understood that it kind of came with the turf, but being able to encourage the future generations. Again, I didn't know who you were. It's a moment in time. You never know how a person's feeling, what a person's thinking, what they're going through, either at home, with their family. You don't know what their experience is, by that victory or that loss, right? That could have been your very last karate tournament. You say, you know what? I'm never doing this again. I lost. I suck. This is horrible. I quit. I give up. That's not what martial arts is about. Martial arts is about encouraging people. You got to be able to inspire people. So just that, and I do that to kids. If I see kids just walking around, because I understand it kind of comes with the turf. I always wonder sometimes if I just walk up to kid like, hey, how you doing? Like, who's this creepy guy? You know what I mean? Just coming up. I always wonder, like, did that person even know who I was? But even if not, I always try and play people compliments. And that's just an example of just trying to inspire someone who maybe I don't know personally, but just a few words of encouragement might motivate them to either continue on to pursue, to become better, it might inspire them to become a great martial artist like yourself. I'm not going to take credit for that. You know what I mean? Because my bow skills wasn't really like that. However, I love hearing stories or seeing pictures. I was just scrolling through some IG stuff, and I saw some pictures of some kids I was just talking to in England. I'm outside of my division. I could tell I'm all geared up, and then I love to see and to be able to interact. So I love to see the pictures of generations. I've done it before, like you were saying yourself, but I always wanted to create myself as this superstar that people aspire to be like, but I also wanted to be someone where they could connect with and they could communicate with, and they didn't feel intimidated to be able to speak to. I've talked to a couple of the newer generations like Bailey. I've talked to even Zolt when he was competing, and Zolt, I had to pull Zolt to the side. I said, look, Zolt, you're an amazing fighter. I was like, you speak great English. I was like, you need to start taking pictures with people. I was like, it's not only about your fighting. I was like, you gotta entertain your fans and stuff like that, my man. You gotta, not necessarily fans, but you gotta inspire people. So some people are there to take pictures with you just because of what you've accomplished. Some people need a word of encouragement at times. And I remember just sitting down. This is just Zolt. It's just one time that I remember saying that and talking to him about, being able to be more engaging with, the people around him, because he was really about like, I need to focus. I'm about my business. I was, you can be about your business, but you also need to recognize that this comes with the turf of becoming who you are in the sport. So all of the young bucks that are out there, I would really encourage you to make sure that, you do show up a little bit early. When you are standing around, make sure you compliment a kid. Go and watch some divisions. I went to a local tournament. Whose event did I go to? Chance Turner had an event out here because now I'm in Texas. So I went to his event, and it was awesome to see some little young ones out there competing, and I would just go up and compliment them. So again, all those top fighters out there today, make sure you guys go and check out some of the younger ones, and make sure you guys encourage them, whether they did forms, whether they did weapons, it doesn't matter. Make sure you do your part to inspire our future generation.
Awesome. And this is going to shock people, because I didn't think that I was going to talk about this on the podcast tonight. Talking about me being inspired by you, and then, you joking about your bow skills. At one point, and I know this is going to shock you, All Stars had a forms and weapons team, Audrey Donahue, Jacob Pinto, Amanda Chen, among others, right? And there was a moment in time where there was a chance that Jackson Rudolph was going to be an All-Star. And for, whatever number of reasons. And then Paul Mitchell wound up calling me a couple of months after all of that was kind of bubbling up. And, I grew up a Paul Mitchell guy. But that was like this close.
Yeah. See?
A lot of people right now are like, what? But anyway.
Yeah, so, they didn't know we were trying to pull them.
Would have been an absolute honor. I was honored at the time to have even received the offer, and for somebody of your stature, and of course the management team that was a part of that. To this day, that means a lot to me, and that was
recognized game.
And that was a big part of my come up. You know what I mean? Like, that was 2011. I won a bunch of overalls, and that period in time is when I kind of realized what I could be. And so I thank you for that, and
yeah, definitely.
Hopefully that little story will shake some stuff up in the comments. But anyway,
my feelings are still hurt from then. I cried in the corner. I'm probably gonna cry again because you're bringing it up. Old wounds, had a scab, it was covered up, it was healing. No, I'm just joking. But no, we had ventured down that route to start to introduce the form side of life, because we wanted to also for everybody over in Europe to see how amazing our forms competitors were. They were seeing how amazing our fighters were. And I was just like, we have some forms guys and some weapons guys that would just blow your guys' mind if you guys actually saw them. So that's why when you guys went over to Irish Open, for instance, they welcomed you guys with open arms.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's been awesome. Like, being able to go over to Ireland and help inspire the people over there. And really, their forms and weapons game has stepped up a ton over the past 5 to 10 years. And that's been really special to see. But we've got some more highlights of yours to get to.
Right.
I promise we'll get to wrapping this up soon, but I could talk to you forever, man. So the other one, the more recent one that, again, when you say Raymond Daniels, this is going to flash in people's minds, is the 720 KO punch in Bellator. Take us through that. I mean, had to be improv, right? But the perfect improv. So take us through that.
So that particular event, in that moment in time, I had transitioned obviously over from my kickboxing and winning my kickboxing world title to transition over to MMA. I got a call from the president of the company to say, hey, we love what you're doing in this kickboxing. We need to get you in front of all these eyeballs that are MMA. So that was like my first MMA fight back from 11 years ago when I had lost. I had went out and I was undefeated kickboxer, knocking everybody out. Never trained in kickboxing, never trained in jiu-jitsu, never trained in wrestling. And I got taken down and I got the brakes beaten off of me. And so if you knew me, you knew at some point I was going to go back and venture back to the MMA world, because I am not an athlete that's going to allow something like that to stand. And I wanted to make sure that this time I actually prepared myself properly to go out there. So mind you, the backstory is this has been something that's been bubbling up for 11 years. So remember the last fight I said with the side spin side, that was my first loss. This one I had lost in MMA, but it had been bubbling for 11 years of just, I need to get back out here and I need to do this. So I had made sure I prepared myself in every which way possible. I trained with my Muay Thai coach still at Classic Fight Team, Talawambos. I trained with UFC superstar Mark Munoz, and he helped me a whole lot with my wrestling. Uriah Faber, all those guys down there. Alpha Male helped me as well. But one of the biggest things was training over at Training Lab with Coach Sam Calavita. He is a mad scientist when it comes to nutrition and it comes to I've always thought I was an athlete, and all the things that I was able to accomplish all those years prior, I couldn't imagine how much more dominant I would have been if I would have had him on my team and to push and call upon my athleticism like that. So I went over there training at Training Lab with TJ Dillashaw, with Juan Archuleta, and he was able to get my weight to such a point and he changed my entire body composition where I felt stronger. Is the first time I was actually able to go out into a fight and felt like it was just a sport karate or training match with as far as mental clarity. I didn't have any struggles for weight cutting or anything like that. So I felt at my absolute best. It was the first time I was just like, oh my gosh, this is different. I feel amazing. Everything is like fire in today, So I go out there and I go out there and I do this move. But during the week, during my weight cut and stuff like that, a little pre-story to it is I'm doing the move. I actually was doing this during practice. So during training, doing my back, right in the back, doing the warm up, but I'm actually throwing the kick off of it. And my wife, she's like, I wanted to tell you, you need to stop doing that because you're never going to do anything like that in a real fight. And, but after I did it, I was like, oh, I wish you would have said that. She's like, oh my gosh, if I would have said that, you would have never let me live that down. I was like, yo, you're right. I would have never let you live that down. But as I was out there in that fight, I hit a guy with a spin kick in the body, which I hit him in the liver, which is one of my patented moves. Usually, like, say, if it was a kickboxing match or even a sport karate, the guy's either taking a break or he's getting a 10 count. So I wanted to, one of my goals, I always wanted to be a forms competitor or weapons competitor. I was just never good enough. So I've always wanted to do, say, give me the bow or I can play around with the bow. I'm not, Jackson Rudolph level, but, I can flip it around a little bit. I've always wanted to do, some 720s and some flips. I'm not Jacob Pinto, but, I can do some tricks. Right. So I've always wanted to do, I love what you guys do because it shows the art and the beauty of the art. And so as a fighter, I think it's my job to be able to show that what you guys are doing, this actually works if you use it in the right time, in the right moment. So I hit the guy in the liver, which put him down. I knew he was really hurt. He was against the fence. So I was like, oh man, this is my chance right here to 720 kick. And I knew it was close to the end of the round, but I felt fresh. It was 4 minutes, 30 something seconds into the round. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hit him with a 720. And people don't think that when you're doing that, you can actually see. But as you know, when you do spins or when you spin your bow, you're actually spotting it in the air and you're preparing for it. Where it's going to be and where it's going to land, but you still have to, there's a split second where you can actually spot it, even though it's happening in real time. For you, sometimes it's like slow motion. It's like, oh, there it is. It's right there. Like I've seen you throw your bow up and I'm like, there's no way he's going to get that. And you spun around and you still got it. So as I'm going into this 720, I spin and I see him kind of like pulling back. I'm like, oh man. I was like, he's backed up out of my range. I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to kick him. But as soon as you throw your bow up in the air, there is no retracting. You don't get as soon as you put the quarter in, you got to take the whole merry-go-round. You just got to work with what you got, right? It doesn't always come out exactly how you planned it, right? Sometimes I know I've seen you catch your bow and like, oh, I didn't mean to catch it like that, but I got it, right? So I'm like, okay, I wanted to throw this kick, but he's going to be too far. I was like, and if I throw this kick, I'm going to be really off balance because it has so much power and I'm going to miss. So I was like, I'm just going to try and come out with a punch. And I hit this guy, boom. And it's just this big knock. And I turn around to see if he's still fighting. And he's just going down. And I'm just like, whew. And then I walk off. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I go over to my coach. My coach is like, what did you just do? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. I was like, that's a 720 punch. I was like, I was trying to kick him, but it just kind of came out that way. So that's just what I went with, and it worked. So I wouldn't recommend trying that in any MMA fights or anything like that. I don't foresee anybody ever pulling anything like that off ever in the near future or in the distant future. They call them knockouts of the century for a reason, because it'll at least got a century or two covered of knockouts. So I don't know if anybody will be able to kind of, especially that one, recreate it, because that was 2 spins. A Chi 720 is actually what it is.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Like I remember watching that live, and it was just like even people who know you and know what you're capable of were still like, is that what he just did? We saw what he did, right? Insane. So we talk about MMA, we talk about your full contact career, and it's not just these crazy highlight knockouts that have brought you success in full contact. It's all the parts of your fighting game, right? And so we've seen several sport karate athletes be able to make the jump, have success in various different full contact arenas. And so use this as kind of your chance to all the non-sport karate believers out there, sport karate non-believers.
All right.
About your point fighting that made you an effective full contact fighter.
So for all those fighters that don't know about sport karate, don't believe in sport karate, and are say, oh, it's just, that sport karate and stuff does not work. I've had the great privilege and pleasure of training some amazing athletes. Any athlete that I have come from, say, a major full contact organization like UFC or Bellator or One Championship or whatever the case is, I always have them do sport karate. GSP, considered one of the greatest of all time, does karate, but also made him do sport karate. Sean Strickland, Sage Northcutt, my wife Colby Northcutt Daniels. If you look at Mike Page and his success, if you look at these amazing fighters and athletes, I've had them all compete. I've trained Tyrone Woodley, Gilbert Burns. I've trained a lot of these fighters, and I made them do sport karate, because what sport karate does is it teaches you how to hit and not to be hit. And the reason why I'm able to do it, even at I'm just turned 42, the reason why I'm able to do it is because I've been the best in the world, or the greatest in the world to ever be able to hit people and not be hit, which provides me with the longevity of my career, because I understand how to hit and not be hit. I understand how to give out damage and not receive it. So I would highly recommend that anybody starting in any type of full contact career to do sport karate fighting, because it's going to teach you how to move, how to engage, how to disengage, how to control actual space. I always tell people like this: if you look at all the great fighters in every arena, right? And you're say from like Muay Thai or kickboxing, right? As a sport karate guy, you see other sport karate guys that are able to branch out over into other organizations and be able to compete well. You look at like Ross Levine. He's able to go over to Glory Kickboxing and do it very well, right? You look at what he's doing right now in karate combat. He's a sport karate guy. You give him a rule set, and he's able to be something fierce, something that people can't understand, right? As a sport karate competitor, if you look at Mike Page, he unfortunately just lost the title from being held down a lot, but look at what he's been able to do in the MMA world. Again, sport karate people are able to go and create these highlights that, the world is kind of like never seen, but we see them every weekend at sport karate tournaments. But none of those athletes in those other sports could ever come and compete with us in sport karate. So I can compete with you in Muay Thai, in kickboxing, in MMA, but you would never be able to come over here to sport karate and actually compete with me. Even as great as say, even Stephen Thompson, for instance. Stephen Thompson is great in kickboxing, and he's been a great kickboxer, but I don't think he would be able to come to sport karate and do what we do in sport karate, even though all the success that he's had in the MMA world. And he uses a sport karate style, but I don't ever remember him actually being a sport karate world champion or competing on the sport karate scene and ever winning anything in that regard, right? So that's why I give such props to the guys. If you look at Bobby Cerrone, who's doing his thing in Bellator right now, a sport karate head, able to go out there and compete and create knockouts, and he even has the wrestling. So I would recommend for anybody that is thinking about going into professional fighting, start with some sport karate, do some wrestling as well, but learn how to control distance. And I think it's amazing. Don't get me wrong, you got to do jiu-jitsu and wrestling and stuff like that. But again, none of them would ever, I could even learn jiu-jitsu and compete. I'd probably get choked out and armbarred and stuff like that, but they would never be able to score on any of us when it comes to what it is that we do. So I always said that I could hit a person in sport karate. You learn to hit people first. I could hit a person 2.5 times before they could ever swing back at me. So that means that every time I can hit a person with 100% of my energy, and they can never hit me first with 100% of their energy. That's why sport karate, and that's why my career has been like it has been, is because I know that I can always hit them first with 100% of my energy, and they can never hit me first because they don't understand what I do.
That's gold. I love it. I love it so much. That was so beautifully said. It's almost like you've thought about that before, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
So we're having all this MMA talk, and we're talking about your crazy highlights, which I assume has to have drawn a number of suitors to try to get Raymond Daniels to fight for them, right? So what is next for you in MMA? Are you gonna? Are there other fights or other titles to go pursue? What's next for you?
Yeah, definitely. Still conquering the MMA world. My goal is to become a MMA world champion in mixed martial artists. I've done it in sport karate. I've done it in kickboxing. Every organization I've ever competed in, I've always climbed to the top, and become, one of their premier fighters and become usually their champion. I think I only fell short in glory. That's only because I got my eye cut in that third round. From no Vaseline on my eye. Always wear Vaseline on your eyes and your face when you're fighting in between rounds, coach. Just looking to do my MMA thing. Fortunate and blessed of having my daughter, Rhea Avery Daniels, here in the next few days. So really excited about that. But as soon as my baby girl is born, I look forward to hitting the ground running into the MMA world, and look to continue to just climb to the top of the MMA world and become an MMA world champion. So that way I can actually truly show everybody that, to be the greatest, I can do it in any and every sport. No box or whatever. If you notice, none of them would ever say my names. I would love to fight and compete against all of them. I fought against professional boxers. I use my same exact sport karate skill set, and I'm able to do the exact same things not because I punch better, but because I can control distance with a footwork and in and out style that they haven't really seen before. So, as soon as she's born, come maybe July, August time, I'm looking forward to trying to get back in that cage and and continue to strive for greatness.
Well, we can't wait to see you out there, and I was gonna wait till the end to give you a shout out for the new baby girl, but congratulations!
Oh, thank you. That's kind of what's put a lot of me announcing any fights and stuff like that on hold right now. So so I'm super excited to to meet my daughter, and then I'm looking forward to getting back in there and continuing to to put out the highlights.
That's awesome. So we got 2 sport karate questions to wrap things up here.
All right.
We've mentioned several of the top fighters in the game today. You've mentioned Bailey, okay, Elijah. Jack Felton is still one of the top fighters in the game today. And you're someone who deservedly so should take so much credit for the progression of sport karate to where it is right now. So for those that are still active in the sport today, what needs to happen next? What is essential for the continued growth of sport karate as a whole, specifically point fighting? Whatever direction you want to take this, what do you see being the key to the sport continuing to grow and develop?
Okay. I was at Ocean State. I was with Joey Greenhall, and Joey and I go way back, and we were bouncing he was mentioning some conversations that we've had kind of like over years. And there was one time when I had all the NASCAR promoters and WACO promoters kind of in one room. It was at the Irish Open. They were having this meeting of the minds, and I got asked kind of like a similar question. I was like, one of the biggest problems with our sport is there's no unification of rules. Period. If you go and you look at soccer, football, what you guys call it, or actual American football, if you look at basketball, you look at baseball, you look at tennis, they have a similar and exact rule set across the board from kids all the way up to adults. Bowling does, golf does. Everybody has the same scoring system. They have the same rule set. In sport karate, if we want to get to that platform, we have to have a unified rule set throughout everybody. Throughout all organizations. And that is a huge problem that we have, because now you don't give the viewer or the spectator an opportunity to learn and to see it once and to be able to understand what is actually going on, because they don't have any knowledge or any information about it. The timeouts, a lot of the fighters are taking these timeouts and stuff like that from like little injuries. That's why I think some type of 10 count needs to come into play where it motivates fighters to get back in there. But one of the biggest things, and I'll take it here because this is what I had mentioned with all the promoters, is one, we need to unify the rule set. Two, you guys need a united flag, meaning there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for sport karate competitors. If you look at, say, what I've done in the fighting realm, what you've done in the weapons realm, if you look at all the forms competitors that came before, the John Valairs, the Mike Chats, right? If you look at all those amazing competitors, there was never any pot of gold. What do I mean by the pot of gold? Again, I sat down with all these guys and I was saying NASCA, WACO, well, really NASCA, because that's over here in the States, and any other organization, including even the gear companies. Shameless plug again, my Evolution Fighter gear is coming out, and it's going to touch on what I'm about to talk about. We need to create some type of scholarship program. We are the only sport that has no type of scholarships. We have families that dedicate hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years for their kids to travel. But our organizations, NASCA, WKC, WKA, all these great organizations are great, but none of them give back to the scholarship foundation, to a higher education for our athletes. I'm not sure if your educational background, did you do college?
Mm-hmm. I did.
Did you have to pay for books?
I did.
Did you have to pay? Right? You had to pay for your classes. Now imagine if the sport, which you were so dominant in, paid for some of those educational costs. Doesn't have to pay for all of it, but just some of it. How much of a difference does that make? You bled, sweat, and teared, and you performed. So I think that it needs to create that platform, but the only way for that to happen is for these organizations to come together, for the gear companies. For me, I'm doing my Evolution Fighting, my Evo gear, and every 10% of every proceed or of every purchase, is going to go back to an education fund. So that way we can start to support our athletes and be able to give away scholarships. So 10% of everybody that buys anything is also going to give a scholarship towards sport karate competitors. So that way we can start to build our sport and build that education. You know what I mean? I think that is something that's missing and something that could take our sport actually to the next level. That's why we have so many athletes that leave. They go to football, they go to basketball, they go to baseball. Why? Not because they're going to get that scholarship, because they have the potential to get that scholarship. So we wouldn't lose as many great competitors. And just imagine how many other great competitors we would get if we actually had some scholarships behind it, and then that's part of my job now, is to create that stream. And then now you see fighters like Ross Levine going out into like the karate combat world. You see Bobby Sharona going into the Bellator, Dean Barry, unfortunately, his UFC fight didn't go as planned, but going into the UFC realm. So there's a professional side a little bit for fighters, but there's not that professional side for, say, forums, or if you want to go with the educational route. And for me, that's a call out to WKC, WKA, to NASCA, to WACO, to Century Martial Arts, to Fighters Inc., to Fighters, or to Top 10, to my own gear company. The only way we can do it is if we do it together and we come together and put some type of scholarship forward for sport karate, for martial arts school owners. Even as a school owner, part of what I'm going to develop as well is for school owners to be able to advertise that their school can now give scholarships, and we'll come up with a board and have an entire criteria that if you meet said criteria, you don't even have to be a tournament competitor, you can now win a scholarship, and that would help blossom the sport. And again, that's just from my 2 cents, being a fly on the wall, and what I feel that our sport does not give that other sports. We don't have the professional side unless you choose to go to that full contact realm, and then we don't have the educational side, which pretty much all sports give away across the board, and we need to unify our rules. And the only way we can do that as well is all of us competitors come together and say, hey, competitors, let's create a competitor, a board of competitor, like a union, and we come together and say, these are the rules set. These are the best rules for weapons, for creative weapons, traditional weapons. These are the rules for this, for fighting. And then we come together, and as fighters and competitors and forms and weapons, we go to these events that are hosting the rule set that we feel is best suited for our sport to grow.
I think all fantastic ideas, and I commend you for those efforts to try to bring scholarship to our sport. You mentioned my educational background, and I talk about it often because I think that it tells a story that you can do it with sport karate, but it should be easier for young men and women to do it. So like for me, I went to Stanford undergrad. I'm a medical student now. And I would not have gotten the opportunity to go for Stanford. Yes, I had good grades and good test scores. I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity had it not been for my martial arts career. And I paid for that opportunity because they don't offer academic scholarships. I paid for that opportunity through martial arts, through going to sport karate tournaments and winning those tournaments, and then teaching private lessons and seminars to fund my education. But it shouldn't be a format where a young man or lady has to do all of this extra work just to be able to pay off school. It should be set up where, because this young man or this young woman is the best in the world at what they do, we are going to reward them and we're going to give them the opportunities that they need to make something else out of all of this success that they've had. Because you mentioned the pot of gold. Once you reach the pinnacle of sport karate, this stat will blow people's minds that haven't thought about it. You go to 10 NASCA tournaments a year, and you win the overall grand championship at every single NASCA tournament. You get one overall, you get $5,000 for the year. And that is not sustainable. Like, we need to find a way to give back to these athletes that are pouring all of their time and energy and heart and soul into being great at this. Being great at this and winning 10 overalls in a year is worth more than $5,000. So there's me on my soapbox, but
100%, brother. I support it. And then if you think about it, with inflation, our prize money has actually gone down, and all other prices have gone up. So as of the new year, with everything in 2023, I plan on my Evo gear being one of the first companies to be able to give away scholarships, and being able to give scholarships to individuals like yourself that are deserving, or that have had to go through that, and they should at least get some sort of reward or some sort of benefit for all the hard work and dedication that you put into our sport, because of great people like yourself. For me, that's why I thought of this as a thing that our sport needs, because again, even if it was just a few bucks, how much would that have actually just helped, or just, that feeling of you are being supported by something that you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, Ray, this has been an absolutely awesome podcast. Episode 100 has been as good as I could have imagined it. And we've talked about the impact that you've had on this sport and the impact that you continue to have on this sport. So my last question, it's a hard hitter. You can go as long or as short on it as you want. What do you want your legacy to be in sport karate? When people years from now look back and remember Raymond Daniels, what would you like them to remember?
Honestly, to be able to pay it forward. And I honestly I want to make the sport a better place, than when I first came. Again, sport karate is my first love for martial arts. It's what made me fall in love with the sport, what made me have my life and the things that I do in life evolve around kind of like the martial arts side of it, just martial arts in general. But I love sport karate. I still do it to this day. Everybody asks me why I don't compete still. It's because I can't risk hurting myself, risk versus reward. But I just want to really make the sport a better place than when I came in. I want to be able to continue to pave the way and inspire future generations, even after it's all said and done for me. I want there to be a legacy where fighters and competitors can continue to grow and to evolve and to blossom and to have a great life and education like yourself. I want that to be something that our sport has, is something that our sport needs, and it's something that we haven't done. And that's what my goal is. And I want everybody to just, to continue to enjoy the sport, and the sport to continue to grow, and then to not fade into nothing.
That was perfect. So Raymond Daniels, everybody that's tuned into this podcast, make sure you smash that share button so that all your friends and family can see this, because anybody that cares about sport karate needs to watch this episode. If you watch one episode of the Jackson Rudolph Podcast, this is the one you should watch. If you're just tuning in, make sure you rewind this thing because, Ray, you've given us so much gold tonight. The wisdom, the stories, the experience. I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and it's been awesome. Any last words?
No, man, I'm really excited. I'm actually out here in Texas. So I've been doing seminar tours left and right out here. Again, I'm taking the month of June pretty much off from privates and seminars to be able to be here and watch my daughter be born. But looking forward to opening up my school out here in Northern Austin up in Texas. So looking forward to doing that, opening my first Evolution Martial Arts Center out here. And then looking to continue to branch out and make sure you guys tune into some new things that I got coming up from my own personal fighting, from my Evolution fighting system and my Evo gear.
So much exciting stuff coming up. So everybody make sure you go and you follow Ray on all his social media platforms. I know Instagram's at RDGOAT, right? Plug the others.
Yep, it's RD_GOAT on IG and Facebook, all those things. Raymond Daniels on Facebook. But otherwise, yeah, man, make sure you guys tune in, make sure you guys follow me. Thank you for having me, man. It was an honor to be a part of your 100th show. And it was awesome to hear the little story of where I had a moment, just a little moment in time of your martial arts career where I was able to, push that in a little inspire button and keep you focused and going.
And thank you for that. And thank you for your time tonight. Everybody, this has been episode 100 of the Jackson Rudolph Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Rudolph, and I'll see you next time.